Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror. Today, we will explore the domain of Valachan, a domain marked by the wild nature and a unique culture in the core of Ravenloft. Are you ready? Then let's travel to the dense and humid forests and ravines of Valachan and find the trails to their distant and isolated villages. Hour of Raven. Valachan is one of the few domains of the core of Ravenloft whose population and culture is not inspired by an European culture, and tries to adapt elements of Gothic horror to a scenario that portrays a land that have gone through a process of colonization. It is important to note that Valachan originally didn't get much detail in the first Ravenloft campaign setting, aside from its Dark Lord, and it did not explicitly draw on inspiration from any culture in our world. Over the years, the domain of Valachan was developed in some tales and adventures, especially in some adventures published in the Dungeon magazine, and finally came to be extensively detailed in the book Gazetteer 4 from the Ravenloft line in the 3rd edition of Dungeons and Dragons. In the most recent books describing this land's past and history, Valachan suffered from the horrors of a violent colonization, which resulted in the death of a large part of its native population. Although these settlers and invaders are not clearly identified, they have a common origin with the invaders of Carthagas, which would explain the names given to their cities and towns. Most of the population of Valachan has dark skin, which colors that range from dark tones like charcoal black to a light tinted tone, and all wear long black hair. Considering all this, I always imagined Valachan as drawing inspiration from Latin America during the process of Spanish and Portuguese colonization. But this scenario of colonization of an untamed land, followed by the extermination of the native indigenous population, can also have its cultural inspiration and parallels to other locations and cultures in our real world. Valachan is currently located at the southwestern end of the core, the great continent of the Lands of the Mists. In the past, the domain was in the extreme south and bordered only the lands of Citicus to the north. After the Grand Conjunction, however, the domain of Valachan was moved to the west of Citicus, being rotated 19 degrees, and now has its eastern border in contact with Citicus and Verbrugg, and its northern border is in contact with the domain of Mordant. The Valachan domain is known for its lush green forests, full of massive trees, whose huge roots are covered with moss and surrounded by a humid mist. Valachan's geography contains a rugged terrain. The region has a few mountains and hills, accompanied by valleys and ravines covered with dense forests, which make traveling around the region quite difficult and offer shelter to various types of predators. The realm is crossed by 2 roads, but only one is still in use. The old road, now in disuse, connected the city of Helbenic to the city of Roth in Citicus, but when Valachan was displaced by the mists after the Great Conjunction, this road now leads to the wild lands of Verbrugg, while it ends abruptly. The only main road still in use crosses the domain from north to south, connecting the city of Mordenshire in the domain of Mordant to the city of Ungrad, passing through the cities of Helbenic and Rothwald. This road varies in quality, with well-maintained sections, alternating with narrow and improvised areas, with difficult navigation. This road can be divided in 2 sections. The new road, a stretch that connects Helbenic to Mordant, was recently built in a hurry after the displacement caused by the Great Conjunction. The other section, which connects Helbenic to Rothwald and Ungrad, is known as the Broken Road, named for its constant interruptions in a difficult terrain, with dangerous descents and bridges of dubious stability. Due to these difficulties, transport and travel by river navigation is usually preferred and adopted. The Arden River is the main river that crosses Valachan, and it's navigable for almost its entire length. This large river still receives some tributaries. Wolf Flood, or the River of the Wolf, flows from Verbruck to Valachan, and its banks are monitored by the Baron's soldiers to prevent the entry of wolf beasts in his domain. The River of Salmon has violent and turbulent waters and passes through Helbenic, which takes advantage of its natural resources. Finally, the River of Gold, near Rotwald, has calmer waters, and is named by the nuggets of gold that can sometimes be found in its bed. Valachan has 4 major forests. The Broad Forest is the largest in the realm and covers the entire western region of Valachan, starting at the northern border with Mordant and proceeding along the coast and through the misty border to the hills in the southern Grad, known as the Bakeland. This huge area of forests contains countless small villages, but most of it is still untouched by men, and rumors say that they are haunted by spirits. Some explorers say that at the south end of this forest, in the hills of Bakeland, there is a trail known as the Path of Innocence, which can cross the mists and lead out of Valachan, leading to a village inhabited only by children and a mad puppeteer. To the west of the Arden River and to the east of the Broken Road is the Forest That Watches, a narrow strip of forest which runs between the river and the road, going from the south of Helbenic to the north of Rotwald, passing through Castle Pantara. This forest was given this strange name by the description of travelers who dared to cross its woods, who described the constant sensation of being watched. These woods are inhabited by countless panthers and other predators. Finally, to the east of Valachan, along the border with Verbruck, we have the Forest of the Beasts and the Forest of Streams, divided by the Ulflud River. This region is constantly patrolled by Baron Karkov forces, who protect the region against any invader from Verbruck. Anyone encountered in this region would be immediately attacked and considered as a possible lycanthrope. The climate in Valachan is temperate, but the kingdom sometimes goes through extremely hot and muddy summers. In winter, snowbanks make travel even more difficult and laborious, and contribute to the isolation of the communities. The Valachan flora is vast and rich, and the dominant tree species found is the redwood, a tree whose wood is very resistant to pests. Other trees can be found, such as cherry trees, willows, beech, and oak trees, and ferns and mosses are also very common under the top of these trees. Hops, barley, peas, and apples are also found in nature or cultivated by the Valachan population. To the south, close to Ungrad, there is a wild variety of fungi to be found, from edible mushrooms to dangerous poisonous species. A unique plant of this region is the Lily of Eternal Slumber, a flower that only blooms at night and supposedly has magical properties capable of warding off vampires. Local legends claim that these delicate flowers only grow where the blood of Utal, the dead god, trickled into the soil. The fauna of Valachan is also vast, and its forests are inhabited by countless creatures. Wild boars, deers, elks, and sheep can be found in these lands. Wolves, which usually abound in the neighboring domain of Verbruck, can only be found on the hills of Bakeland, and weasels, badgers, and wolverines also act as predators in these lands. However, the most shrill and feared predators of these domains are its big cats, called by the natives as panthers. The term is used by the people of Valachan in a vague way and refers to any feline of dark fur. The most common species are about 4 feet in length, and weight on average up to 120 pounds. But in Rottwald's Singing Bone Tavern, there is the clown of a panther that reached an astonishing 35 feet in length. These terrible predators are not the only dangers surrounding their forests, which are also the habitat of countless supernatural creatures. The very name of the Valachan domain means haunted in the ancient Vasi language, and its forests abound in legends of spirits, shape-shifting creatures, and fae. It's not uncommon to feel observed when walking through its ravines and forests, and sometimes you will find small objects and treasures on dry trees and streams, supposedly belonging to the Skosgra and Elvsra, fae spirits of forests and rivers. The lands of Valachan are still plagued by an unusual disease known as the white fever. This disease, attributed to blood-sucking insects of this domain, usually causes weakness, dizziness, apathy, and pallor. In most cases, victims recover after resting and eating red meat, but some victims weaken until they wither and die. The population of Valachan is made up almost entirely of humans, who are from the same ethnic group. The Valachani are tall, muscular, and usually have broad shoulders and long, sturdy limbs. The population of the Valachani has long been miscegenated with those of its invaders and colonizers. Most Valachani have dark skin color, which ranges from dark tones like charcoal or coffee to light tanned tones. Their hair is black, and men and women wear long hair. Men do not wear beards or mustaches, and such facial hair clearly marks a person as a foreigner, but the use of long sideburns is popular in the region. The eyes of the Valachani people are almost always black, but sometimes individuals are born with disturbing yellow eyes. The legends tell that these people have panther spirits as ancestors and have a connection to the god Utah, being able to control panthers. Life in the wilderness of Valachan is full of dangers, and scars are an object of pride for both sexes and a sign of bravery and resilience for those who wear them. Valachanis usually wear practical and durable clothes, wearing tunics and baggy pants made of leather and wool. The leather or wool of their clothes are usually colored with brightly colored dyes and decorated with fringes and animal fangs. Both sexes wear jewelry and ornaments like rustic bracelets and necklaces adorned with animal fangs or precious metals. The population of Valachan is firm, resolute, and proud. Their struggle with the constant dangers of these lands translates into their behavior, and from an early age, children of both sexes learn agriculture, fishing, hunting, and survival in the woods. The Valachani society values an individual ability to survive amidst the dangers of nature, and they consider themselves superior to those who depend on the comfort and security of urban life. The values of this society are supported by a vision of rustic honor, and those who seek studies, education, or professions of intellectual activities are seen as lazy and unfit, and a clear sign of moral decay. The Valachanis are proud of this rustic and practical culture, but it also makes them backwards and superstitious. Foreigners are viewed with suspicion until they have proven their worth according to the Valachani culture standards, when they will then be welcomed with open arms by the community. The families of a small community or village in Valachan may have small disputes among themselves, but usually support each other in times of emergency. Valachani society is matriarchal, and women play a prominent role as heads of families, being responsible for the general well-being of all its members, controlling their resources, and making important decisions. During the wedding ceremonies, the groom moves to the woman's home and places himself under the protection of the bride, assuming her family name and coat of arms. The woman, in turn, takes a ritualistic oath that she will protect her family from any danger, be they spirits, predators, thieves, bad luck, or even hunger. Divorces are possible, but unusual, and accepted only when the wife or husband is accused of being unable to fulfill their duties and promises. The life of the Valachan society is marked by innumerable rituals and celebrations, which vary in complexity and duration. Births, rites of passage, marriages, funerals, and changes of season are marked by rites and festivals that can involve exchanging gifts, dancing, and banquets. At funerals, there is a tradition of lament speeches, chants, and exposure of the body to the moonlight, so that the soul of the deceased may find its way to the Utah deity. The exchange of handmade gifts is also a sign of a family's status and social position. Offering handmade gifts demonstrates the giver's ability as well as his resources. Often the courtship is made through the exchange of gifts, and sometimes families' dispute for prestige and social status involves public exchange of gifts of increasing complexity and extravagance, to demonstrate their ability and wealth, and whoever fails to repay a gift of the same level of expertise demonstrates its inferiority. The diet of the Valachan is rich in fruits, vegetables, roasted meat, mushrooms, stews, and soups. One of the typical dishes is called the dedgimat and is composed of offal meats with herbs, roasted over charcoal and served with apples. Dark stout beer brewed in hot water is widespread through the kingdom. A portion of each meal is usually left at the foot of a tree or poured into a river stream to please the spirits. The Valachan language is a derivation of the ancient Vasi dialect, and if both parties speak slowly and carefully, they can be understood in the domains of Kartakas, Haslan, and Nova Vasa, who share the same linguistic base. Magic is viewed with contempt by the Valachanis. Divine magic is tolerated, and these priests are active members of the community, having given up of a more noble life and activity to serve as emissary of the gods. Arcane magic, however, is seen as a perversion of the natural order and viewed with terror. Arcane users are seen with disgust and fear, and might be persecuted and suffer aggression from the population or the guards. Most of the people of Valachan are devoted to the religion of Utah, the dead god. Despite having faith in the divinity, few devote their lives to the faith, and each community usually has a single priest who assumes the role of peacemaker of conflicts. They are responsible for taking care of the helpless and unfit, settling disputes among the nobles, acting as diplomats between villages, ensuring that taxes are collected, appeasing spirits, and dealing with the Baron's guard. These priests are called Moanekone, which means married to the moon, and once a year they gather at a place near Castopantara on a full moon night to ask for the god blessing over Valachan. Utah was the god of the native indigenous population of Valachan, and was strongly connected to the cycle of nature. When Valachan began to be invaded and colonized, and the indigenous natives murdered or enslaved, Utah sacrificed himself to start the pacification. With his death, invaders and natives became a single people, and his spirits ascended to the moon, from where the dead god watches his subjects. His dogmas preach that people should integrate themselves into the cycle of nature and accept life's difficulties, to prove their worth and devotion by overcoming these trials. Those who prove their value will gain immortality of the spirit, enjoying Utah, but those who are weak will reincarnate to suffer again. Utah's religion is monotheistic, but a range of lesser natural spirits are considered his servants, and also receive prayers and offerings. Their temples have no roofs, so that moonlight can penetrate its interior, and each temple holds a statuette of their divinity before his sacrifice and ascension. A green man with yellow eyes, with a suffering face, and a broken and injured body, and on its base is written, "That which is dead cannot suffer still." Other faiths have little space in Valachan, but the Church of Ezra and Hala are present in the largest communities. Valachan's population is concentrated mainly around its three cities, Helbenik, Rotwald and Ungrat. Many Valachanis also live in small communities and villages scattered throughout the kingdom, where they carry out mineral or vegetal extraction, agriculture and livestock. The only areas that are not populated are the regions close to the Misty Border, to Castel Pantara, and to the Scarlet Maze. Valachan's buildings are usually made of heavy wooden logs, with black slate gable ceilings. These buildings are usually large, with few windows, and sometimes are composed of a single huge hall, where socialization takes place, usually carved with designs of animals, plants and mythological creatures, and adorned with the heraldry of the family matriarch. Attentive observers will notice that the building's windows are facing north and not west, where they would absorb daylight. This is a consequence of Valachan's unexpected displacement during the Grand Conjunction. Valachan's economy is directly linked to the forest and its natural resources. Despite the dangers of attacks by big cats and other forest creatures, the activity of woodcutters is quite lucrative, and the redwood is exported to the other neighboring domains. Sawmills and carpenters also thrive in Valachan, with their products in high demand. Where the forests had already been cleared, agriculture and livestock are strong activities, and Valachan's rich soil produces many foods that are exported to neighboring kingdoms. To the south, close to the city of Rotwald, mining activities are also carried out, and gold and copper are extracted. The government and administration of justice of each village and city rest with the noble families, whose titles are hereditary and passed on by the maternal lineage. The legitimacy of these nobles is ensured by the priests of Utah, who assure that the nobility are composed of families chosen by the blessing of the dead god. However, the real power of Valachan is concentrated in the hands of Baron Ulrich von Kharkov, the sovereign ruler of Valachan. The Baron is assisted by a council, with a representative member from each of the three cities of Valachan, but his power is indivisible. The Baron rules lightly when his orders are respected, but he brutally represses anyone who dare to oppose his orders. This tyrannical government has repressed countless attempts of revolts, with exemplary punishment, but strangely, the ruler is adored and loved by many of the Valachan people. One of the Baron's most despicable orders is the dreaded annual lottery. Tragedy seems to surround the Baron, who year after year becomes a widower when his recently wed wife succumbs to the fearsome white fever. Each year, one city is chosen, and a lottery is made among all unmarried young girls who are old enough to marry. The woman who is drawn will have the distinguishable honor of becoming the new wife of the Baron, a title that is often accompanied by tragedy and death. The Baron's government is sustained by heavy taxes imposed on cities and communities, and by fees levied on the movement of people and goods. His main assistant is Lady Adeline, a mysterious elf who keeps her face covered with a veil, and acts as his emissary and head of taxes collection. To guarantee the order and strength of his government, the Baron and Lady Adeline count on a force of soldiers known as the Black Leopards. These men are removed from their village at a young age and began to serve the Baron in collecting taxes, applying punishments, and imposing von Karkov's will on his domain. They can be identified by the Baron's arm, a magic weapon provided by von Karkov to his soldiers, a whip with small blades that is attached to a heavy mace that usually marks its victims with horrible scars. The soldiers act freely in the realm. They usually act with impunity and abuse. It is not uncommon to hear that these soldiers charge abusive taxes on behalf of the Baron, confiscate exotic weapons and items of interest held by foreigners, and even murder suspects of using arcane magic. Rumors tell that many of these soldiers are in fact lycanthropes, terrible were-panthers. As if these soldiers were not enough to impose their strength, rumors also point out that the Baron have a secret police, called the Cat's Claw. The superstitious people of Valachan believe that the secret police of the Baron is composed of invisible spirits that observes everything, and attribute to these hidden forces the disturbing ability of the Baron to obtain information. The truth about these sorceries, however, is still unknown to us. Thus, we have completed our guide for explorers of Valachan. However, these untamed lands are still permeated with deep mysteries that defy further investigation. Subscribe to this channel and enable notifications. Join us, and we will follow the mysterious rituals of the priests of Utah as they gather to recite the tragic past of these lands to the moon, asking for the blessing of their dead god.